All right, good afternoon. Happy Tuesday to everybody. We are back again on Unfiltered King and the Queen podcast. The podcast, man, where we talk to each other, not at each other as men and women. And believe you me, man, we have a great show for you all tonight. Season 4 is getting on the way, man. It's getting away from here, man. And so we want to thank all of those who hung in there with us and following us in our different capacities. As always, we're excited that you can find us not only just on Facebook Live, if you're joining us there, thank you, but you can also find us on Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and coming soon, we will be in the world of Apple Podcasts. And so also you can find us on YouTube. Thank you for a big shout out to our YouTube supporters, man. A lot of our actual followers have been finding us in that space. And so wherever you following us at, thank you for being here. We're glad to have you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to share those questions and comments in the spaces that provided. We like to think that we have a great show for you guys, and so we look forward to hearing from you. With that being said, today is this month has been a special month. I don't know how many people know it, but this is September is reserved for Suicide Awareness Month, and we feel our obligation, if you will, to do a show. Let's wrap our hands around that conversation, right? A lot of times we kind of avoid that conversation. It's become taboo. But I think after tonight, man, at least it can get the conversation started. And so tonight we come for you with the topic from isolation to connection, rewriting the narrative about suicide. And so as always, I would like to introduce the team and the guests, and then, man, we're just going to jump in. And like I said, we don't want to talk at you. We want to talk with you. So keep those conversations going. As you guys can see, we've been talking behind stages. Our latest guest, Ruth, she has put her acronym in parentheses here, and so I'm gonna give her a few moments, you know what I mean, to tell the people how her day has been and share whatever she want to share.
Well, why don't you go ahead and tell everybody what you said I was? Tell them what you said I was. What's my name?
You asked me what is the R.
Tell
Kelly.
them what's my name. We didn't say all that. You tell them TMI. Tell them what's my name. Say it.
The world green.
Okay.
I said it.
The world's greatest. So I am the heavyweight champion of all times, and y'all can hear R. Kelly in the background. The world's greatest. Bam. So y'all know O2 Boo? I spanked him. Yeah.
This is what she actually brought in here, you know what I mean? And so we'll let her have her space, right? I'm in out of state. She's in another state, so she didn't have the privilege of playing me. So as of right now, she has the crown. So, congratulations.
Thank you.
And if you heard any hating in that, because it was. So but congratulations, though. Darren, man, what's up? How's everything been?
Hi, I'm good. I'm here, present, and ready to talk to you.
Okay. And last but not least, man, we have an honored, esteemed guest that I will allow some time for her to introduce herself in her own way. But I am privileged to have Dr. Nichelle on the show tonight. Dr. Nichelle, I'm going to tell y'all a funny story, and then I'm going to get off my soapbox. And this is just how peaceful she is. So when we exchange numbers, I'm just texting back and forth, Michelle, I'm talking my first name basis and everything. Done had a whole conversation with the lady. And then I looked on Facebook. I'm like, oh my God, let me pick my face up and send that apologetic text. She was like, no, it's okay. That's fine. I'm like, your mama named you Nichelle? I'm gonna call you Nichelle. I'm like, I'm getting this Michelle. I'm just like, but she didn't give me any flack over it. So thank you for understanding. I just had to get that out. But Dr. Nichelle, thank you for being here tonight. If you could just share with the people a little bit about what you do professionally, and then we'll kind of jump into this conversation.
Yeah, sure. First, I've got to start by saying thank you for even extending the invitation for me to chime in on this very, very important topic. So it's near and dear to my heart as a licensed psychotherapist for the past couple of decades. So doing this work for 20 years, I know the importance of being aware about suicide and prevention. So thank you for bringing this topic forward. But yeah, like I said, I've been a therapist for the past 20 years, primarily working with people of color, Black women in particular, but working with all populations, really. I love everybody. I also specialize in working with children and those who struggle with addictions, so chemical dependency, drug addiction, food addiction. So kind of got my hands in a lot of different things, but in many cases, if I really, really think back within all of those areas of specialties, suicide is a big deal. So I'm in private practice, and so what that basically means is I primarily work for myself and treat people one-on-one. At some point, back in the day, I used to actually go in the homes and do therapy as well. But at this point, I'm just practicing one-on-one in my private practice. Also do a little bit of teaching on the side as well. I'm also on faculty at SMU. So
Okay.
I also enjoy teaching other people how to do therapy as well. And
Okay.
yeah, so I'll stop there because it could go on and on as far as what I do. I mean, you know how we are as women. We kind of do everything.
You know, but I'm glad that you took the time to kind of explain what it is that you do, because a lot of time we sit around and we hear these words, we let it fly over our head. And I think that's where the misunderstanding and ignorance, that not knowing, comes from, which we'll talk about later. So I appreciate you giving us your platform. I think it'll be an interesting conversation, because definitely with you coming, having that expertise, and then lending your ears to us, where we can kind of just have that regular conversation. Hopefully we can encourage people to like just have the conversation, right? Like, we know it doesn't matter about the words and the background, things of that sort. And I think a lot of time we wait until it's too late. You know, we're trying to speak from a place of emotion, and, you know, we don't have the knowledge. So I'm hoping that our audience gets some knowledge from this space. Now, I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but if you can kind of expound on that a little bit more, if you feel, what makes this topic to you personal? Because I know you see an array of things in just your profession alone, but why is this topic near and dear to you?
This topic is near and dear to me because it's not really talked about a lot or enough, in my opinion. And believe it or not, suicide is on the rise within the Black community, and not just within the Black community. And let me back up. It's on the rise in the Black community, which is disturbing, but among other groups and populations, it's been pretty steady. So over the past 4 to 5 years, we've seen a significant increase in the rate of suicide among those ages 10 to 24.
Jesus.
So we have people or kids as young as 10 years of age dying by suicide. And so that's why it's near and dear to my heart, because that really speaks to prevention, you know, the prevention efforts that are very, very necessary.
You know, that just took me aback when you stated that age. 10, that's a baby. Like, to me, when I hear it, that's a baby, right? A child that's struggling with this topic. And I think sometimes it's one of those topics it's not a concern to us till it knocks at our door. And I think that's what makes it such a tragedy, is that we hear about it over there and it just becomes numb until it knocks at our door. And it's one of those things that we deal with, like I said, the emotion, the embarrassment of it, and things of that sort that we're going to talk about, but we never deal with the crux of it. And so I'm definitely interested in kind of diving down into this topic here, from isolation to reconnection, rewriting the narrative about suicide. And if you guys just joined us, remember you can follow us on Facebook Live. We're on YouTube, Spotify, anywhere where you can find your podcast. You can actually find us. And don't forget to like, share, and follow us in those places. Dr. Nichelle, what I want to do is kind of start by breaking down this heavy topic, if you will, or title of this episode. So my next question is, what does rewriting the narrative around suicide means to you? Right? You would think we just jump in and talk about suicide and it's wrong and whatnot. But I love the fact when you and I was talking, you were talking about, let's rewrite the narrative. Oh, so there's a narrative of what this thing is. What is that narrative and why is it important for us to rewrite it?
Well, it's important to rewrite it because there's so much stigma attached to suicide, right? And so we really need to normalize the topic in the conversation. And so to me, that's what rewriting the narrative is about. It's about kind of diving into the myths and dispelling those myths. And so when we rewrite the narrative, we kind of take the shame and the silent side of it. And because that's what keeps us in this unfortunate cycle of dying by suicide. The stigma that it's something that only weak people turn to. It's something that only white people tend to use as a solution. And none of those things are true. So rewriting the narrative is really just putting the truth out there.
Right. I love that, putting the truth out there, right? Because we often do shame people, or people feel very awkward in even having that conversation. And although, let me say this, I know this is a very touchy and very intimate situation. And so we'll try our best to navigate this conversation, keeping that in mind. But there are some things, like Dr. Nichelle, we want to be proactive in speaking on, so that those out there can get the help that they need, right? We don't have all the solutions, but we definitely feel that suicide is not even an alternative, right? Even if it's a destination that we find ourselves at or thinking about, we want to get to the point where we show that there are other alternatives. So kind of bear with us. And even in your questions and comments, let's be sensitive to everybody else's spaces, right? We all don't know what people are going through. And hopefully, like Dr. Nichelle said, we can kind of change that narrative as we go about in our own way, right? We're not trying to hug the world, but hopefully, if we can reach that one person to start changing that narrative and normalizing this conversation, I think we would have gone a long way to do some great things. Now, I know when we initially talked, you were talking about isolation, and how detriment that is to this topic, right? There goes another one of those words that we usually don't associate with this topic. But now that we're having a conversation, what do you think, why do you think isolation plays such a powerful role in the suicidal ideation? Why do you think that is such a critical thing to understand and identify when it comes to the topic of suicide?
That's a really, really good question. Because when you're alone with your thoughts, especially when you're in a dark moment, you're alone with your thoughts. And so there's so much opportunity for the worst case scenario to show up. Connection is the antidote to depression, suicidal ideation. So that's why connection is so important, because again, the isolation is where we find ourselves in a pretty scary place. And that's why the topic that we're talking about today is very, very important, because prevention is really, really important, and talking about it on a consistent basis outside of Suicide Prevention or Awareness Month. So the more we talk about it, the less people fall prey to dying by suicide or turning to suicide when they are in the moments, those moments by themselves. So, they can kind of look back to that podcast that they saw, in September, and come up with some solutions and some ideas rather than turning to suicide. And so, isolation just it's the perfect storm to kind of have those negative thoughts fester.
Okay. Now, Ruth and Dan, I want to come to you guys and ask you guys a question. And this is kind of like a follow-up question, if you will. So if I'm putting you on the spot, take some time to kind of, jog it in your brain, if you will. And I apologize in advance. But think about what Dr. Nichelle said. In this day and time where we're so prideful. I can do it by myself. I don't need anybody. I got this. Like, could you speak to turn that wall down and realizing like there's power in connection? Like, yeah, we don't want to be around everybody that's negative, but like, can we kill this narrative that we don't need anybody? Because I think it forces people to have to tote that into what Dr. Nichelle is saying. If I'm in that space of suicidal thoughts and I'm trying to tote around, I got it, like that can be very detrimental. So could either one of you kind of speak on how it's okay to be independent, but also let's hug the fact that, hey, we all need somebody, if that makes sense.
I think that makes sense and that sounds good, but sometimes you're just afraid to ask for help, or you're afraid of, me personally, I'm afraid to ask for help. And I'm afraid because I don't ever want it to be thrown back in my face if you help me. So I hide behind a lot of different things. I smile, I grin, and you will never know if I'm hurting or if I need your help. So I just think it's cliche to say that if you need me, ask me. But when someone asks you, it's like, oh, if you would have asked me last week, I could have helped you. So that makes you not want to ask the next person. So for me, it's hard to ask for help. And so you just mask a lot of different things. So it's hard for me. And when you do know that I need help, it's kind of like too late, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So kind of the same concept that Ruth portrayed. But for me personally, a lot of it comes from like childhood, right? So when your childhood is in a place to where you have things where you were like criticized or shunned for certain things, kind of like abandoned in a sense. I think as you get older in life and you continuously start to deal with dynamics where you're still being abandoned, criticized, or kind of seeking help, right? But not really voicing it, because sometimes voicing it, like Ruth said, people will be like, oh, well, I'll help you. But then, being let down so much, you kind of draw a wall to where that it's like telling somebody that, yes, asking for help, go do that. You know what I'm saying? Kill the narrative. But when you've been somebody who's been in a place to where that's the narrative has always been you're it, it's kind of hard to cipher away from that dynamic, right? Until somebody actually comes in and literally and figuratively, what I'm saying, kind of pulls you into a direction of like, okay, I'm here, I'm present, because like I said, being in dynamics to where that you haven't necessarily had that. And even when you've tried to like essentially reach, what I'm saying, for help, and people still didn't show up, that's a scary place to be in, because you're wanting help, you're speaking out about the help you need, but then you're still not getting it.
Afraid of being judged.
Yeah.
And that's a real reality. And I think sometimes, a lot of times people hear this topic, and I ain't never thought about killing myself, so it's not my issue, so to speak. But I think sometimes even talking about this can expose that you're not necessarily the problem, but there may be other areas in your life. Maybe you need to reevaluate your circle. Maybe family ain't really functioning as family. Boy, I started to run right there. Right? We blood and everything, but am I trying to make you be a title? Right? Mm-hmm. And so maybe these are some offset things that we can easily reevaluate and say, hey, let's fix that. And it has nothing to do with me, because if I've been shut down so many times, judged and beat down and laughed at, I'm probably not going to be open to you. You know what I'm saying? Especially if that's what's contributing to me, making me feel that I have to take my own life in my own hands. What I want to do, I want to read with you guys I'm gonna just drop some statistics, because again, we have to personalize this, right? Like, we know this is not like the pretty topic, and where we have a lot of laughs through. We'll do our best, but we have to normalize this, like Dr. Nichelle said, right? Like, it can't be this thing to the left or right of us. And I think that's the biggest thing. It's not a matter if or who. It's almost, if you listen to those stats that Dr. Nichelle gave, let's be honest, it's almost like a matter of when, right? And we hope that it's not us or our circle. But I was reading some stats here, you guys. And again, I'll just drop a couple of them throughout the show as we continue to move on to our topic of understanding the layers. I think Diana has some questions for the guests. But some stats that hit me: total deaths, about 740,000 suicides are reported annually worldwide. And it says that's equating to one death every 43 seconds.
Wow.
That's a real number now, y'all. We talk about a lot of things leading death, and we know we can talk about a lot of things, police brutality, cancer, and all this. But these are people who are taking their lives one every 43 seconds. All right. We've been on this podcast a little over 21 minutes. Put that in a real reality, right? Like you do, I won't stress that point, but you do the math. So it is a real thing. And unfortunately, we don't even get involved, like Dr. Nichelle alluded to, until after the fact, right? Gender. Now, this one, and then I can't wait to get to this one. And we got some questions about this, but I'm going to throw this one out here. Men die from suicide at twice the rate of women. However, women's suicide attempts requiring medical care are 3 times more frequent than men. That can open up a whole different conversation. Yes, men are twice as much to follow through, but women attempts are survived because they are 3 times to get the help. Come on, fellas. Right? That says a lot right there. And so I want to kind of, a lot of time we say these facts and figures, and it's not me, Dr. Nichelle, it's not me, Ruth. Not me. But the reality is these numbers actually come to show. I think we lost Diana, you guys, so we'll bring her back up when she comes back online. But yeah, I found that interesting, Dr. Nichelle. And Dr. Nichelle, if you can just quickly, I know this is not a question, but if you could speak to that, where men die from suicide twice the rate of women. However, women's suicide attempts require medical care are 3 times more frequent than men. Which in reality, even if women attempt it, there are 3 times more to ask and go and get the help.
Well, I think it's the obvious, right? Or maybe I shouldn't even assume that it's obvious, but it's the conditioning, right? Men are conditioned to be the strong one. And are expected to be able to shoulder it all, right? And so, again, there's that stigma attached to going out and seeking mental help, and so I think that speaks to that. That's exactly what that speaks to.
Yeah, and I'll say this, and we'll move on, man. We just got to do better, right? We're already talking about something that it's a very vulnerable place. We always talked about that, and we know how Black men are with their emotions anyway in this world. But we have to do better in making sure that we're surrounding ourselves and we're getting the help that we actually need. And so I'll leave it that stat at that. Like I said, I'll just be dropping them here and there because I want us to normalize. I don't want us to be afraid. I don't want us to be fearful of this topic or have this topic, to what Dr. Nichelle alluded to, too late. Hey, let's start being proactive about this topic. From isolation to connection, rewriting the narrative about suicide. So we're going to start rewriting this thing tonight, and hopefully in your communities you can finish writing and rewriting the narrative on this. At this time, we're going to kind of start talking about understanding the layers. Dr. Nichelle, this was something we talked about in our initial conversation. How a lot of times people arrive up with the Superman cape on, and hey, don't kill yourself. And there are layers to it, right? Like that's the last thing. If someone's about to, commit the act, that we show up with our Superman cape and we're going to save the day. And so with that being said, I'll kind of turn it over to Diana for those questions, and we'll kind of have a nuanced conversation on the topic of understanding the layers of suicide.
Yes. Awesome. Thank you again, Dr. Nichelle, for taking time out of your day to come on and be a part of our show. My first question for you might be a little long-winded, but just bear with me. What are some common misconceptions people have about suicide and those who struggle with suicidal thoughts? So,
I think one of the biggest one would be people who commit suicide are selfish.
mm-hmm.
I know I hear that one a lot. And as a therapist, I had a few, and not any of them were selfish at all. In fact, they were the opposite, right? And so a lot of times people who turn to suicide as a form of relief, they're the ones who pour into everyone else, so much so that they don't take the time to address their mental health needs. So that's probably one of the biggest ones. And I think we talked about it a little bit earlier. People who turn to suicide are weak, and they just don't have willpower. A lot of times people tend to think choosing suicide is tied to a lack of willpower or strength, and it's none of those things.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. I'll give my little piece on the misconception as well. I know a lot of times people think you're supposed to look a certain way, right? Sad, withdrawn, or like pretty much broken, right? But for me, when I was, thinking about harming myself, I was actually on a trip in Aruba, one of my girlfriends, and I was like standing on a cliff. And I took a picture, and I posted it on my Facebook, and I was like, "This is what depression looks like." I was smiling, like my hair was like all, like blowing in the wind, and nobody noticed, my little caption. They just saw the picture, but that was literally me, in like one of the darkest places I think I've ever been in my life, standing on a cliff, smiling on vacation, so that, and I was very high functioning at the time too, right? That's another part of somebody who's essentially ready to take their lives. We're high functioning. We are the ones that pour into everybody till we're pretty much empty. And I remember that moment so vividly. I can even think about it right now. I know exactly what I had on, what day it was, what time, and all that. Literally, the cliff was right there. So but yeah,
that's a really good point.
Yeah,
there's something called smiling depression.
Yeah,
you're right. It's not always the person in the room, in the dark room, isolated, sad, crying. There's, like you said, high functioning.
I was just high functioning, and but so just wanted to give my piece essentially on that. And then my next question. Oh, yeah, yes.
If I want to pour some out there. First of all, Donna, thank you for your transparency. I believe in speaking power to power. And I want to make sure that didn't go in anybody's head, and I won't repeat or try to add on to it, but I think it is powerful when you normalize it and put it into words. Because somebody somewhere, it's still tugging, should I, could I, Definitely this is social media, and that's probably why we're not getting a lot of comments, and that's respectful. But that's speaking that power to power. So I just want to say personally, I appreciate you for sharing what you did. And I also want to say something that was the biggest misconception, something Dr. Nichelle said, that, man, they are trying to address the situation. Not everybody who commits or attempt to commit suicide is they want to take their lives. It becomes a solution. It becomes a perceived solution of them taking their lives. There is really an underlying issue, even if it is about them. I think that's a big misconception. What's wrong with them? They got everything going on. Why they want to take their lives? You don't know what anybody's going through, right? That is a huge misconception thing. We can look and diagnose that if they got a good life. A lot of time when people dealing with suicide, it's not them just picking one day, something's wrong with me. It is something that they're not dealing with where they feel that is just an alternative. And the more and more that alternative become more exploratory, more realistic, then whether they act on it or not. And so I thought that was a great point for a misconception that why that person would take that, like they got all this and all that. You don't know what people are going through.
Right. Yeah. Most people who commit suicide, they don't want to die. They just want relief.
Right.
That's the word you use, relief. There you go.
Right.
Relief.
Yes. So my next question was how do cultural, gender, or generational factors shape how we talk or don't talk about suicide?
That's a good one as well.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing that comes to mind in the Black community, we don't air out our dirty laundry.
Right.
We don't tell our business. We pray it away. We don't. We're not crazy. We don't go talk to a psychiatrist because we're not crazy. Just go to the pastor and talk to the pastor and have him pray for us, and that's all we need. So those are the two big ones I see, especially working with Black people. We don't talk about it, because talking about it is putting our business in the streets.
Right. So another take on that too, as far as a cultural lens for me, right? I've been in the Navy for 17 years. Part of, I think, the military in general, there's this notion to just suck it up, right? You just got to kind of do your job day in and day out, and no pain, no gain. Like, this is normal. As long as you get through the day, you've pretty much, survived anything. So you shouldn't want to, die by suicide or anything, which is a stigma, right? Because sucking it up, that's not the best way forward. Like, we need to be able to talk about, whatever it is we're going through, regardless of what has become normal, as far as us leading, right, in the military. And then as a woman, as a mother, right, there's also parts of that too, where, we have to be the nurturer, the leader, the provider, essentially, when it's just us, so that's another layer for the gender part of it that can, take over for us as Black women as well, or just women in general. Being a mother, it's not easy, so that's another part for it as well. But as far as men, right, they're bred to be machines, right, stoic. They don't really talk about their problems or their what's going on in them, so they just continue to move along as if they don't need to express what's bothering them as well.
Right.
And then generationally, like you said, as far as like in our culture, right, we don't air out our dirty laundry. Therapy, that means you're crazy. Why would you need to go talk to anybody? You can just talk to, what I'm saying, your family. There's even memes that say like, oh, I'm depressed, and it's like, depress these dishes, So.
Right. Yep.
And if I could, when we talk about gender, right, let me speak to our men, in particular our Black men.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Well, first, let me talk to our counterparts. Let our boys show emotions. Quit telling them to suck it up. Quit calling them a weaker vessel. Period. That's a period behind that.
Mm-hmm.
Quit shaming them at a young age to not show their emotion, and then when they become emotional as monsters, you blame the man in them. They're broken men. Can we say that?
Yes.
Right. We'll get to them. I'll get to the men here in a minute, but let's just take some accountability, because all of this becomes generational, because now you have bad habits poured down over and over and over. And yes, we have single mothers, and yes, we salute what single mothers do. But somehow, some way, let's get some men in that young man's life. Because yes, you can do it. We know you can do it. The track record is there. But guess what? There are just some things, just man on man, is just needed, right? So it's not an indictment if you cannot do it, but get somehow in your church a best friend, an uncle, a grandfather, to help normalize and understand what those emotions are. Because we do live in a world where we're told that the more we show our emotion, the less we are men, right? But sometimes we have to acknowledge that that's been taught also at home, to not show emotions, quit crying. If you cry, I'm gonna give you something to cry for. And so when we turn that off at an early age, and now we go in our second and third communities, friends, girlfriends, husbands, and wives and things of that sort, and we cannot show those emotions. Now we're isolated as broken men. It's not fair, right? And then men on the other end, we got to lose this toxic masculinity to where it's being a man is equivalent to us not showing our emotions. We are human beings. God all gave us emotion. He even gave the animals the emotion. And if we don't have anywhere to deal with that, it's going to stop us up, man. And we don't want to hear, you hear what the statistics said, man. We don't want to find ourselves so isolated that we think being a man is equivalent to taking our own life. It's nothing masculine about that. So I just wanted to say those pointers. So we always talk about genders,
Right.
you know, at each other on this podcast. But what are some things we can do within ourselves so we can be a better product for the other gender?
Yes. Thank you for that. I'm sure that was very much needed. Dr. Nichelle, my last question for you is: can you speak to the difference between wanting to die and wanting the pain to stop? Which I know in our last little questions you did speak on it, but if you can kind of elaborate on that, that would be great.
Yeah, and again, I can't stress enough why what we're doing is so important. Podcasts where we are bringing attention and awareness and education, because most people who die by suicide, it's really a matter of in their minds, their only option as far as getting some form of relief. They don't want to die. They very much want to live, but the pain is so bad and so deep that they feel like just not being alive anymore is the solution. So if on a regular, consistent basis, we have these type of initiatives where we're putting out the education and the knowledge and the resources in those moments, it's very, very plausible that one of those resources will come up as a solution as opposed to taking their own life. So, most people who commit or die, and that's the other thing. We also kind of want to change the language surrounding suicide. When we say commit suicide, I know I learned years and years ago, it kind of puts a negative connotation on it. Because when you think about the word commit, it's usually associated with an illegal act, right?
Yeah.
So I try to catch, and I catch myself often. So the term that we try to use would be die by suicide. Because it kind of adds to the shame and the guilt. And that's kind of what we're trying to steer away from. But people who die by suicide, they very much want to live, but they just want the pain to stop. And so having some resources that they can fall back on, I think is what's the key.
Yeah. And then if I can mention this to kind of just piggyback what Dr. Nichelle said, also be careful of speaking of suicidal victims, of those who have attempted or those who have thought about it, when equating them with those who unfortunately followed through.
Yeah.
Right. We definitely hate the fact that there are the reality that people follow through. But those who are here, if they've already associated with that, then they're in what you're talking about, right? It normalizes in a bad way, if that makes sense, Dr. Nichelle. It's kind of like clumps everybody together, and like, now all that narrative or whatnot, now with the issue that they're dealing with, I got to deal with that stigma of it too, right? So we want to definitely differentiate on those. Just for a few breaking points, we got some comments coming in. Kenneth Boston, great topic, much needed conversation. As always, man, check out Kenneth the Fire Sessions, man. He's been a faithful follower of ours here on Unfiltered Kings and the Queen podcast. So glad to have you in the house. We have Darvin Barton, who said,
"My dad."
Evening to all. These persons, I'm telling you, I don't even get nothing. I'm not like you all. And then we have Kenneth, who says, a lot of people are mentally unwell but are ashamed to share their thoughts because of the label that comes with it.
Right.
Oh my God, like that just poured out of my chest. We have to quit mistaking mental illness with mental wellness. You know, mental wellness should be talked about more, but a lot of time we use those changes interchangeably. We are not in the profession of Dr. Nichelle or someone who's licensed to identify an illness in someone. But there are things that we can do from a wellness standpoint, right?
Mhm.
Can hurt our mind. And I think we do loosely to what Ken is alluding to. There are just some people just not mentally well, right? Just like if you physically not well. That don't mean you're a doctor, you can diagnose me. Hey, I'm feeling bad. Let me go to somebody that can help me out. Sometimes we got to normalize that mental wellness. Shameless plug, the title of my book, Think Better to Be Better, Guide to Mental Wellness. Let's just start being better and getting better with our minds, right? But I think sometimes, Dr. Nichelle, when we come and put that stigma, oh, you crazy, or you're a psychopath, or you gas, these are real clinical terms that we don't have the true authority to put on someone, right? If you could speak to that a little bit again, I know that kind of came in with Kenan, how we sometimes pick it up on ourselves and try to be the diagnosis and things of that sort, and that adds on to pressure in real life.
Absolutely. And you know, I kind of have a love-hate relationship. Even as a psychotherapist, I have a love-hate relationship with diagnosing. Because people tend to live up to or perform to a diagnosis or a label, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so even in my practice, I'm not quick to diagnose, because at the end of the day, we don't treat a diagnosis anyway. We treat the person, the individual, the symptom, right? And so what the challenges that they are experiencing. But we live in a society where if you want to get the help, especially if it's backed by insurance, you got to have that diagnosis. So that's kind of where the value of a diagnosis comes into play. But you hit it. Mental wellness is to me the most important, right? Because wellness speaks to what you do on a day-to-day basis to keep yourself mentally in check, right? And so if you keep your wellness at the forefront or make it a priority, chances are you're not going to get to the point to where you achieve a diagnosis. So man, mental wellness is very, very, very important and key. So
there you go. Ann Smith say that's good. That's good. You gonna have me pronouncing that, you know what I'm saying? I let one of the females pronounce that with the T on the end. But no, seriously, I think that's another one of those misconceptions where we add on to this false narrative. It's one of those things, especially in our community, Black community, taking a life of its own. We use those words so loosely. And to me, it's like scratching across a chalkboard, y'all. When I see some people use these terms as if it's like, and then like you said, people can play into a narrative.
right.
Right? Thinking they're getting the help. I think people don't understand that's how dangerous it is. There are some people who are looking for help so much, they'll accept the wrong thing just because they're looking for that hope. So I say that to family and friends, we got to be very responsible, right? When we have that heart of help, right idea, wrong process. I always talk about it, and we rush in with these things we've heard, these clickbait that we've heard on online and things of this sort. Layman, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, Bert, I think he's a first time viewer. He said much needed topic. So we thank you guys for joining in. From isolation to connection, rewriting the narrative about.
That's my dad. Hey.
Well, we got that. Oh, we daddy first timer. First,
Yeah.
hold on, I should have got on my necktie first. Hey, how you doing, Daddy? You know how you try to be on everybody good side. How you doing, Daddy? You doing all right? All right, then. I was just going to quote a scripture. No, I'm just kidding. But no, welcome to the podcast show, man. I'm glad to have your daughter on there. So yeah, let's just be mindful, like I said again, where I think sometimes we mean well, but sometimes we do more damage than good. And so we're going to try to keep this going, you guys. We talked about understanding the layers of suicide. We can't just rush in with the solution, right? And so Diana definitely had some good pointed questions, kind of help us kind of peel back the layer. But now we're going to turn our attention to Ruth, and I think she has questions about this silence, right? A lot of time it's not necessary. We hear it right on TV, we scroll Facebook, but there could be a deafening silence right in our proverbial backyard, right to the person to the left or right of us, kind of like you and Diana were alluding to earlier, Dr. Nichelle. This person's functioning fine. They don't have the traditional signs. And so now it's just going by so silent, out of sight, out of mind. So I'm interested in the questions and the answers that you may have. So I'll turn it over to Ruth at this point in time.
First, I want to say thank you, Dr. Nichelle. This is something, this topic is very close and dear to me because I think that we don't talk about this is enough. And a lot of time it's the people that sit right next to us, or it's the people that we lay right next to that share the same sentiments of this topic. I'm for one, people look at me and say, Ruth, you're the strongest person that I know. You're that friend that I can always come to. But there was a point in time in my life that I wasn't that strong, but no one ever knew that. I had hit rock bottom and I had already had the stuff laid out to take my life. And I thank God that because I think today I'm here by the grace of God. Now, some people can say you can't pray it away or whatever. You can pray it away, but I know that I'm here by the grace of God. And for anybody who's out there who's thinking about it, I can look back at that time and see that I did not see a way out. The only way out was to alleviate that pain. But now when I look back at what I came through, I thank God that I didn't take my life, because it's no comparison to what the joy that I have now.
Yes.
So if anybody is going through, you may not see a way now, but joy really do come in the morning. You just sometimes have to get it out. So that's what, so I thank you for coming to share light. And some of the questions that I'm getting ready to ask you relate to what I'm saying, because we're strong. And so what are some of the signs that someone might be silently struggling, even if they appear fine on the outside? How can we tell our loved ones, or what are some of the signs that our loved ones can see that they're struggling? What are some of the signs?
Yeah, very, very good question. So let's just start with the ones that you're probably going to see if you Google signs of someone who may be suicidal. So depression is probably the biggest one. So someone who is very noticeably depressed. So they are isolating, they are withdrawing, so they're not showing up to the family functions like they used to. They're not going to church, they're not doing their favorite activities or going to places that they routinely show up to. They start giving away things that mean something to them, those precious items, they start giving them away. So crying a lot. You may see a significant amount of weight loss. They're not eating as much, so they have poor appetite. Those are kind of the big telltale signs of depression. But then there's the total opposite end of the spectrum. They may be suddenly happy where they were in a depressive state for maybe weeks or months, but then all of a sudden they're happy and there's no obvious reasons as to why. That tends to happen when people have decided to die by suicide and they are looking forward to the relief that's coming. And so you will see that as well. So that's pretty good. I think a description of some of the signs of those who may be, suicidal.
And the next question is, how can loved ones approach the conversation? Like, that they're depressed, but how can you approach it with compassion without offending that person?
This is very, very important because I love that we had a pretty good talk about this in the debriefing, and Jay brought up a really, really good point, that being that when people or loved ones are trying to help, they're so focused on saying the right thing.
Mhm.
And they're so focused on coming up with a solution. They want to fix it, which, I mean, of course, I mean, you love, your loved ones. So of course you want to try to come up with a solution. But the reality of it is the best thing that you can do is just sit and listen. These people who have decided upon or have suicidal ideation, a lot of times it's because they just don't feel heard. They don't feel a sense of connection. And so sometimes really often, even when I train my therapists, when they have a suicidal client sitting in front of them, I tell them the theories, the strategies, all that goes out of the window. We're not doing that. What your role at that moment is just to listen first. Just be a sounding board, because at that point, all of the techniques and strategies, they wouldn't work anyway. So same thing with just the average person who's not a therapist, who's a loved one. The best thing that you can do is listen and let the person know that you are there for them, and be with them.
Okay. Now, my last question is like a twofold question too. What role does language play in their stigmatizing or supporting someone in a crisis? And a lot of people, I think, don't get the help because of the labels. And we kind of spoke on that. Because when you hear the word mental, you automatically associate that with crazy. So what are some of the terms that we can use to better, so people are aware, or will come forward to talk or to say that, hey, it's not okay to be okay, but I need some help, that can ask for help. Because I know in the military, it's called mental health. A lot of people will not go to the mental health because it's mental health. So I think sometimes it's the wording that is used that people don't get the help. So what is some better wording to make people more openly to want to go get the help?
I gotta go back to wellness.
I like
that's my go-to term.
I love that.
And even when we think about like physical health, the analogy that I use a lot is that we as people, if a person who is diabetic or who has diabetes comes and faints because their sugar level has dropped, what are you going to do? Chances are you're going to run and get some insulin, right? And help the person, come back. And so it's the same thing with our mental health. Someone who is hurting due to depression or other types of mental challenges, we address it. We don't just ignore it. We don't stigmatize it. So mental wellness is just as important as physical wellness. In many cases, it can be even more important, because when you don't take care of yourself mentally, it impacts you physically.
Okay. Thank you. Makes sense.
And this is something, man, this is such a powerful conversation, because as I was sitting thinking, it's ironic that we so much want to do something, right? This is a loved one, right? Whether it's family or friend, but the best thing we can do is continue to educate ourselves, right? Because as I listen to you talk about, some of the identifications, if you will, it really is a long range, right? So it's not this cookie cutter, if I got a friend that's doing so well, oh, they must be thinking, but no. But if we can continue to educate ourselves on the topic ourselves, just like any other emergency, we may not be experts in it, but when the crisis comes, we can do our part. I think that's the thing, doing our part versus overstepping and, right idea, wrong process. We do so much, even when we're talking about the language root, I statements, right? This person wants to take their lives. So if you're using I statements and they cannot resonate that, I wouldn't have done that. If it was me, that's not, I'm trying to show them something, but that's probably a poor sense choice of words, right? And so whether it's offensive intentionally or unintentionally, I think more the danger when it's unintentional, when we're, like Dr. Nichelle was saying, we're really trying, we saying these words, but have you educated yourself on that, right? So I think that's the whole thing, from isolation to connection. We have to educate ourselves So if we catch ourselves in these situations, and we just have to be, we don't have to rush in and be the solution. We can just be the pathway to it.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
There's a term called active listening. So if any of you want to dive into it a little bit more, just research active listening. That's a very powerful technique that you would want to use with someone who's experiencing suicidal ideation. And just kind of like you said, Jay, it's not about you at all. It's all about actively focusing and listening on the person who's having this suicidal ideation.
And sometimes if you notice that when someone comes talking to you about what they're feeling, a lot of times they're crying out for help anyway. And sometimes I think the best thing, like you said, active listening, and sometimes you don't have to say anything at all. But sometimes the best thing is just to listen, because when you open your mouth, you make the biggest mistake by saying what you wouldn't do, but you're not in their shoes. So I think the best thing to do is just to listen and just let them know that you are there for them. And sometimes that's all they want to do is just for someone to listen and to be heard. That's all.
Right.
Man, this is a great conversation. Thank you to those who are joining in. Whether that's your comments or your questions, definitely keep those coming and really normalizing, like you said, this conversation. We're trying to rewrite this narrative, and so hopefully we've been given some great pointers. Let's turn our attention now. We kind of talked about the opening and grounding. We talked about understanding the layers. We just talked about how breaking that silence, right? Like we have to say something and be aware. And sometimes that silence doesn't necessarily have to be in words, like Ruth said. It's sometimes that breaking that silence, just being aware, right, of those certain signs. But now we want to talk about, Dr. Nichelle, some tools for healing and connection. Because it's one thing to rewrite it, the narrative, but if we write the same thing over and over again, like we're right back at square one. And so now that we've kind of unraveled this, let's talk about some tools for healing and how can we now bring to the forefront. We're going to move from isolation. How can we move to connection? So with that being said, what practices or resources have you found most effective in helping people move from isolation to connection?
Kind of like what we're talking about right now, prevention. So I think we underestimate the power of therapy. Just like everybody has a PCP, a primary care physician, it is my belief that everyone should have a therapist.
Right?
Yeah, even if you feel like you have it all together, just having someone sit across from you that can shed some objectivity, help you identify some blind spots, because we all have those blind spots that get in the way. So I think that would be a very good start, is get you a therapist. And so, we even have these great platforms dedicated to Black people specifically. So we have Black therapy for Black girls. If you want to look for a Black therapist geared toward women, and then you also have therapy for Black men. It's a dedicated site for Black men who are looking for therapists. But then we also have Psychology Today. That's just, that's probably the most well-known one. So get a therapist. And then social media, it can be good in a lot of ways, but then it can also have some negative aspects associated with it as well. Sometimes we get so involved with social media to the point to where we use it as our sole form of connection, right? And it's just, sometimes it's best to sit across from someone and actually look in their eyes, because we can get it twisted by looking at social media. You see these reels, the highlights, and we think that that's that person's life. And the reality of it is that's just only a snapshot of what their life really is. So, but at the same time, social media can connect us, right? So we just kind of want to not just rely on it as the primary method of connection. So make it a point to actually see your people face to face.
Yeah.
And when you're at work and you're walking past your coworker and you say, "How you doing?" It's kind of like a little flippant thing that we just say off the cuff. But next time you see someone, actually look them in the eye and genuinely be curious about, hey, how are you doing? And let that come across. And you'd be surprised at what people actually have to say when you ask that question. So, connection. It can also be with self. A lot of times we are not connected within ourselves. And when we lose that connection, then that's kind of where things start to go downhill. So remember that sport that you used to love to play, or that instrument that you played in high school that gave you so much pleasure, and just reconnect with yourself.
Right.
So I can go on and on about connection, but it's very, very important because, again, like I said at the beginning of the podcast, connection is the antidote to suicide and isolation.
Dr. Nichelle, you said something earlier, and I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to see if you could expound on it, of breaking that notion that you have to have a pocket full of money to have a therapist. When we in day today that we got EAP who can give you X amount of free visits, we got stuff online. Could you? Because I think that's another thing in our culture, in our Black culture. And they just want to take my money, or we even do it with physical doctors. But could you address that narrative and just kind of break that one wide open? Yeah, people have jobs and need to get compensated, but as far as the access to help in 2025 as it relates to being costly.
That's a really good question. So you talked about EAP, and that just stands for those of you who don't know, the Employee Assistance Program. So a lot of these big companies, they have, a workplace strategy in place where they will offer you typically 3 to 6, 9, some of them even have 12 free counseling sessions. And so you would just go to your HR and inquire. They give you a list of counselors who are covered under your EAP, and you call them, set up an appointment, and there you have your free therapy. So that was a really, really good one, Jay. And then a lot of people don't know that a lot of the large insurance companies, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield, they actually, on a lot of their plans, offer free virtual therapy sessions through platforms like Doc On Demand. So that just stands for Doctor on Demand, or MD Live. So those are some things that you can look into. There are therapists like myself. I dedicate a certain amount of sessions pro bono. So if you find yourself in a bind, don't be afraid to reach out to a therapist and say, "Hey, do you offer pro bono sessions?" And a lot of them do. And then there's also just community resources. And so simply put in Google free counseling, free therapy, and see what comes up.
All right. And so I wanted to make sure we got that in as we move on. Don't write off help for yourself about dollars and cents, right? Especially when you look at, we're one of the biggest consumers when it comes to a nationality, but I digress on that. But I wanted to definitely address that misnomer. I think a lot of times we write it off simply because we feel we can't afford it. And you kind of touched about this, how can community spaces like podcasts, schools, churches become safer places for these conversations? So we'll kind of move on with that one. I am interested in this one, though. What advice would you give someone who feels like they're at the edge and they don't know how to ask for the help? So here we are again. They're not in it. They haven't planned it. They're not there yet, but they're right on the cuffs on the edge, and they don't know where to start, who to ask, who to talk to, things of that sort.
What I find is most people have at least one person in their life that they feel comfortable talking to. And many times it's not that the people are not there, it's the person who, again, just does not, they have their own, like you said, kind of generational stigmas in their head that's kind of holding them back. And so reach out to that one trusted person. And the thing is, you don't necessarily have to reveal that you are thinking about suicide. Sometimes it's just a matter of talking, and reaching out and having a conversation can change your mood drastically. Another point, change your environment. Get up. Just a change of scenery can make a big difference. I know people who follow me know that I'm big on nature. Get out, get some nature. It makes a big difference. Just feeling the wind across your skin, seeing the leaves, hearing the birds. But just to kind of go back to what, to answer the question, I would say just talk to that one trusted friend. And it does not have to even be on the topic of, again, I'm having thoughts of hurting myself. Just reach out just to have a normal conversation. And then hopefully what happens is that'll turn to, okay, let's get together and go have dinner. The biggest thing is put yourself in a position to where you're no longer isolating. Again, the isolation is what's most detrimental. Go to church. I know a lot of us, we are Christians, and we believe in, the power of our church community. So go to church. The only thing I want to say about that, I often think about, what if every church had a licensed counselor in the church? I often wondered how powerful that would be. Because as a therapist, I am not shunning prayer or God or the church, but that collaboration, I think, would be a very, very powerful thing.
Yeah. Yeah, we was talking about that in our debriefing. I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ, but we have to quit also treating places in the church where God and prayer is like a salve, right? Just put it on it. We can pray to God, and God can introduce us to other resources to go get the help, even if that assistance is not from the pastor, right? Like, I wouldn't go to my pastor if I had a broken arm, right? That don't mean he's not the pastor. It just means he don't have that capacity. And so I think that could be a whole different conversation, right, when it comes to the church and also mental wellness. A lot of time we just kind of just pray to God, and it just don't work that way, right?
No.
Something I also wanted you to speak on, and you mentioned it, because I think what's detrimental also, just as important in identifying the right people, we'd also have to make sure that we don't overcompensate the wrong people.
Right.
Well, that's mama. Well, that's that. Well, that's husband. That's why they supposed to understand. And now we're putting them in a position they don't have the
tools.
They don't have the capacity to own that. And so if you can speak to that also, because Big Mama and them, or just because they have these titles, and we go to them and let's just say they fall short of our need, now it kind of comes back on us, and it's like, well, we was at the wrong well in the first place.
Right. Yeah, everybody, that's one of the reasons why, as therapists, it's against our code of ethics to work with family members or even friends, because you're too close to the situation to really be of a benefit, right? So it's okay to lean on them for support and go to them for certain things, but certain things, it can actually backfire on you. So that's why you want to really reach out to the professionals. That's exactly what they're there for.
All right, you guys, look, we're going to try our best to land this plane. We should have knew what we was getting into, man, from the debriefing. We've been talking tonight about from isolation to connection. September is Suicide Awareness Month. So we were talking about from isolation to connection, rewriting this narrative that we have about suicide, right? Instead of just jumping into the topic itself about what we feel about it, How can we rewrite the narrative as we're approaching? So we're going to try to land it with a few more questions. Again, I know this is a very sensitive topic. Thank you for those who actually shared their comments. But if this is something that you want to have an ongoing conversation, you want to reach out to Dr. Nichelle or any type of way that we can help you, remember our inboxes is always confidential. Not all eyes see that, not even the team, to be transparent, just to protect your privacy. And so you definitely have those spaces to look at those questions. And we don't have all the answers, but we'll do our best to kind of point you in the right direction. And so again, Dr. Nichelle Chandler, we cannot state enough how much we thank you for joining us in this conversation, putting some credibility behind even our personal experiences that we shared. And so I promise to have a couple of more questions, then we'll get you out of here. This has just been too good to be true. So now we want to talk about legacy and empowerment, right? This is after we've taken the deep breath, right? Okay, we're back on the bridge, sort of on the bank, so to speak, kind of to use Diana's analogy. And here's some things that I want you to answer in your own way. But I mean, ask the audience or whoever view this, be thinking about your answers to these actual questions more than you have, or if you haven't done so tonight. So that first question is, if you could rewrite one core belief that society holds about suicide, what would that be?
That only weak people commit suicide or die by suicide or turn to suicide as a solution.
Good. That's good.
It's a good one.
That's good.
Because it really isn't. It's not a matter of strength. It's really not. I mean, if you kind of look at the people who have died by suicide, I mean, these are often very successful, high-powered individuals.
Yes.
High achieving. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I was looking at some statistics here. Put this in perspective now. 12.8 million people seriously thought about suicide. 3.7 million people, and that's in this year, 3.7 million people made a plan for suicide, and 1.5 million attempted suicide. That's not who we unfortunately lost our lives. You guys, these are real numbers. I think when we get into stats, it's always the other people. But I put these stats out to normalize that it is okay if you fit in these numbers. We thank God that we're not part of this. You're not part of the statistics who unfortunately follow through. But we have to understand that this is a real issue that outside of September that we deal with, and you're not by yourself. You know, when we talk about isolation to connection, you're not by yourself. I think that's another thing. Once you start talking about it and getting around self-help groups, you'll realize that it is a very normal thing. I tell people all the time, you know, people know about my background, but hey, I'm a suicide survivor, right? You don't look a certain way, right? It's not like a scar, right? And that scar is healed. Like you never know, and you're never fully healed. It's one of those things. Really, what if you know? Everybody's situation is different, but you may find yourself just having to manage, right? There's no such thing, never again, right? Depending on the situation you're dealing with. So, Dr. Nichelle, what message do you hope listeners walk away after hearing this episode? I know we talked about an array of everything, but like if you had your top 2 or 3, well, however many, like what do you say if you didn't hear anything else? Take this home with you.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention that earlier that suicide is the 3rd leading cause of death among Black individuals. 3rd leading cause of death. So it's out there, and it's more common than we know.
Mm-hmm.
I think the main takeaway is that suicidal ideation is more common than we'd like to think. There's so much guilt and shame surrounding it that people don't talk about it though. And kind of like you said, Jay, those struggling with those mental challenges that lead to suicide don't look a certain way. They are often high achieving. They're often the ones who are smiling. I know in a debriefing we talked about Twitch, right? When Twitch died by suicide, everybody was pretty shocked. Oh, he was just on TikTok dancing and laughing. And so it does not look a certain way. The signs and symptoms don't just look a certain way. And suicidal ideation is way more common than we think.
Okay. And my last question, how can we do better as a collective in society in holding space for the pain without judgment?
Right.
How can we do a better job? Because, I thought about something you said earlier. How you doing? Fine. We don't really give people, hey, look, I was thinking about taking my life this morning. We don't really give people that space. And when we do, it's kind of like, we even laugh. I don't really care about how you're doing. How can we do better in this world of strangers, vulnerability, being judged? In your own way, how can we do better in creating a space collectively to allow the surface without judgment?
That's where the connection comes in, right? And so it's not about just that one moment when a person has decided that or thinking about suicide. If you have that connection with someone, if or when that time comes, that person feels comfortable coming to you and talking to you about it. So I think as a society, if we become more intentional about connecting with people, then people would just be more comfortable sharing those thoughts and be open to listening and talking through whatever it is that's hurting them. So just be more intentional about forming those connections and not so heavily relying on social media, but physical connection, physical touch, being in the presence of someone and giving them a tight hug and saying, I love you, or, I was thinking about you, picking up the phone. Hey, you crossed my mind, wondering how you're doing. So just being intentional about keeping those ongoing day-to-day connections.
Right. And just because you had bad experiences with connect, don't let that word make you fearful of connecting, right? That just means we have to be more mindful of who we connect to, but let's normalize connecting also, because I know a lot of time when we get hurt, we talked about that earlier, it's so easy to fight against connection. Now I'm over here, now I stay out the way and all of that. No, that just means I need to use discernment and choose a little bit better, but there's still value in that connection.
Right.
Daniel, Ruth, do you guys have anything that you guys want to say or add on? This has been a great one, you guys. Really has.
Not for me. You've answered.
Yeah.
I really appreciate this conversation.
Okay.
I think it needed to be had.
Yeah. I know this is beginning to sound like a trend, but it's like this really can be one that you can kind of do another part two, because I feel like we really just scratched the surface. I'm over here holding back, kind of like, and I'd be briefing like, oh, no, I said I was going to stay to the script. But Dr. Nichelle Chandler, I cannot thank you enough. I say this personally and before our viewers, you have been a godsend. Thank you for lending your ear, your mind, and more importantly, your heart. I think that's another thing, man. You can tell when people are passionate about this topic, and I'm just thankful that God brought you our way. So thank you for your space and time tonight.
My pleasure. Thank you.
No problem at all. We definitely have to have you back, and so I'm going to speak that into existence. You guys, thank you for joining us again. This was one of those where we tried to put some smiles and everything into it, but hey, man, sometimes we have to have a serious conversation. Right, men and women alike. Let's have the conversation within ourselves so we can have a better conversation together. So from isolation to connection,
on a positive note. Because I'm all about ending on a positive note, everyone. I'm the heavyweight champion. Y'all see it? You know, so we're going to smile tonight. Uno. Yeah. Dr. Nichelle, if we was in the same place, I can, show you how it's done.
I swear.
Okay. Well, we might have to set something up because I'm. We can
do it virtual. It's just that in a year I'll be ready to play somebody for my title. But right now, I'm gonna hang this on probably in my bedroom, right, like above the bed, like bam, so I can see it when I go to sleep. But I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the podcast, Dr. Nichelle, Jay, Diana.
Don't thank me. I ain't gave you nothing. I ain't gave you this book. Look, I'm going to get in my app store and find an app. I don't care if you can throw an app. We're going to have to find a way to solve this, You little...
I'm pretty sure it's online.
Y'all can screenshot my picture.
If you feel you can beat Ruth in Uno, please, I would like to bring you on this show.
My number is 288-333-700.
If you feel confident that you can knock this down and get this belt, please, you have a spot on the show. No, seriously.
Seriously, he's telling the truth. You have a spot on the show, but you can't win.
Oh my goodness. Hey, she told me at the beginning when we were practicing for this show, she was like, James, this is going to be a heavy topic. And I had been thinking about this also. So I'm like, yeah, how can we, we don't want to just heavy. She was like, she sent me a picture of the belt. And I'm just like, oh my God. And it worked because I didn't have anything. So I couldn't rebuttal back. I'm like, I don't have nothing else to put in there. So, but no, seriously, guys, thank you guys for hanging in there. Like I said, I know this is not one that we openly talk about. I cannot stress enough. If you have those questions, concerns, reach out to whoever told you about the podcast, or if you just want to put it in the inbox. Like I said, it is a safe space. We'll do our best to get you connected. And so don't forget to like and share and follow us everywhere you can find podcasts at. We are there. We're on all social media platforms. We cannot do it without you. But with that being said, man, we're going to end it on a high note. Ruth, a.k.a. the world's greatest. Thank you for sharing your belt with us. And again, Dr. Nichelle, we cannot thank you enough. Until next time, man, remember, man, let's have the conversation as men and women to each other, not at each other. Talk to y'all later.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Thank you.